1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. Hello, and welcome to episode 13 of Macabre Matinee with Craig and Sean. As per usual, I'm Craig Lance.
And I'm Sean, bearded Capitolittan.
As you can probably tell by that little teaser there, we're now starting on a run through of the Freddy Krueger movies. So, we're going to dig in and enjoy these for what they are. And get ahead in, just so you know, spoiler warning time. We do a deep dive into these movies, and we can't do
Oh, yeah.
that if we're worried about spoilers. So,
Yeah. Yep.
um,
So you have been warned per usual.
yes, if you haven't seen it, now's your chance to go watch it, and then press pause, go watch the movie, come back, and 3, 4, you better lock your door and finish listening to our somewhat great take on this movie.
Someone. That's what we aim to achieve, a somewhat great take.
Yeah, yeah. There used to be this restaurant called OK Chinese Buffet. I always thought it was a funny name. They were just
Right.
okay.
Just okay.
Um, yeah, so here we go. We're talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 1, even though it doesn't really have that subtitle of Part 1. It's just A Nightmare on Elm Street. It was released in 1984. It was written and directed by master of horror Wes Craven.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It stars movie icon John Saxon as Lieutenant Thompson, Nancy's father.
Right.
Heather Langenkamp as Nancy. Amanda Wise as Tina. And Johnny Depp is Glenn Lance, which is, obviously, if you don't know where Johnny Depp has been in, then, you are not paying attention for the last 40 years, but this was his first major role.
Oh, yeah.
And I also
Yep.
had to say his last name because it's my last name. And then,
Naturally.
yeah, Robert England, of course, is Freddy Krueger. And then a small role in this movie is the English teacher, Lynn Shay, who you will recognize from the Insidious verse of movies.
Oh, yeah. Which,
So,
literally, until watching it for this review, and I've watched this movie 100 times, never connected it.
yeah, neither did I.
My wife actually saw her and was like, "Is that her from the city?" I was like, "No, yes, yes, it is."
I don't know that I've seen this movie since Insidious came out, so I didn't put it together. But watching through it today, I was like, "Yep, yeah, that is the woman from Insidious."
Oh yeah,
Okay, so this movie starts off with the now familiar flashback. Oh, yeah, sorry, wrong series. But no, honestly, it does start off with somewhat of a flashback as a man, Freddy Krueger, is making his knife glove. Then it switches to a dream sequence where Tina is being pursued by a man in a green and red ratty sweatshirt and who has a glove full of razor sharp knives attached to his each finger. He eventually catches up to Tina, and just as he is about to kill her, she startles awake but finds her nightgown has been ripped. The next morning, she meets up with her friends, Nancy and Glenn, as well as her boyfriend, Rod, who is the bad boy. And we know this because it's a 1980s movie, and Rod is wearing leather and has an earring.
yeah, it's true. It's
So,
factual though. I mean, that's just hard
that,
facts back then.
yeah, the 80s were nothing if not true to their stereotypes. Tina tells her friends about her nightmare, and it becomes apparent that all four of them are having similar nightmares, even though the two guys, of course, don't want to talk about it. That night, Glenn and Nancy meet up with Tina at her house so she doesn't have to be alone since her mom's out of town. Soon, Rod shows up, and he and Tina make their way to her mom's room, leaving Nancy and Glenn to not mess around because they are there for Tina, who has no problem at all messing around with Rod, even though her friends are there for her. And we all know what happens when you break the moral code in a horror movie.
It's true.
So
They never learn. They still have not
they
learned.
they do not. And so that night, as they all fall asleep, Both Nancy and Tina start having nightmares. However, Nancy's are pretty minimal as Tina again is pursued by the killer. This time he catches her, and as she struggles, Rod wakes up. Uh, but Tina, who is still asleep, is slashed wide open while Rod watches on in horror. Rod, knowing he has a reputation for being the bad boy, escapes through the window as Glenn and Nancy burst into the room. Nancy's father is the detective on the case and questions Nancy about Rod. Nancy really shows her acting chops in the scene at the police station. Some of the best acting I've ever seen in my life, right there. Um,
Yeah, yeah. The actor, which I had to actually look up how to pronounce his name for Rod.
oh yeah,
Yeah, Jesus Garcia. Yeah, not the strongest.
yeah. You know, they had a couple of really good actors in this movie,
Right.
and then a couple of not so really good actors in this movie. But so the next morning, as Nancy heads to school, Rod pulls her into the bushes and tells her his side of the story. Nancy's father, however, was telling Nancy and uses the opportunity to arrest Rod for the murder of Tina. Later that day at school, Nancy falls asleep in class and is pursued by the same killer that killed Tina. She wakes herself up by burning her arm on a steam pipe in her dream. However, when she awakens, her arm is actually burned in real life. Her teacher, Mrs. Insidious, sends her home for the day. And on the way home, Nancy stops at the jail to talk to Rod. During their conversation, she realizes he is dreaming about the same guy. That night, she falls asleep in the tub and the killer tries to drown her. She manages to escape, and Glenn comes over that evening, and her and Glenn hatch a plan for him to let her sleep, but if she starts having a nightmare, he is going to wake her up. Before falling asleep, Nancy looks in the mirror and says she looks like she's 20, so that we all feel better about them showing her boobs in the bathtub scene. Um, the actress is actually 20 at the time of the movie,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
still she's playing a 15-year-old, so it was a little weird.
Right.
So she
Oh,
goes
the
in,
80s. Oh, the
yeah,
80s.
she goes to sleep, and unfortunately for her, so does Glenn. As the a man chases her, I believe it is this point that we learn that his name is actually Freddy, but she is trying to wake up. Eventually, her alarm goes off, waking both her and Glenn and saving her from Freddy. She realizes her and Glenn need to go check on Rod at jail. And as she argues with her father and the night crew, Rod is slowly being hanged by Freddy. Eventually, they convince the officers to check on Rod, who, of course, find him dead from apparent suicide. And, you know, as viewers, we know it wasn't suicide. After Rod's funeral, Nancy's mom takes her to a sleep disorder treatment facility where when Nancy finally gives in, once she falls asleep, her nightmares come. And they go in and wake her. She awakens with Freddy's hat in her hands and cuts on her wrist. Back at home, her mom blames her for trying to pull something by having the hat. Nancy gets the hat from her mom and shows her that even has the guy's name in it, Fred Krueger. Her mom decides to get drunk and Nancy leaves. Glenn confesses to Nancy he doesn't sleep anymore either, and Nancy starts forming a plan. When she returns home, her mom is wasted now and has had the security company come and bar every window and door in the house. Nancy is mad because she doesn't know how she will sneak her boyfriend in anymore. Nancy's mom tells her the truth about Freddie, that he was a local child killer and that he had killed over 20 children. When he got off because of a technicality, the parents of the town got together, hunted him down, and killed him, burning him alive. Nancy's mom even kept his glove as some sort of weird souvenir.
Yeah, that was strange to keep it literally on the property.
Yeah, and how did it not burn? But hey, I'm just here to watch the movie.
Right.
Um, Mom continues to drink, and Nancy calls Glenn. The plan is now in full effect. She is going to go to sleep and pull Freddy out of her dreams, and Glenn is going to bash him with a baseball bat. Except his parents are on full guard that night and don't let him out of their sight. Eventually, Glenn falls asleep, and Freddy pulls him into the bed with a fountain of blood coming from the bed. It was the kind of killing that the Bloodhound gang might say you need to clean up with a mop and bucket. Uh,
Yeah, that was that boy bled a lot.
yeah, I read somewhere that they used like 500 gallons of fake blood for this movie, and I
Oh,
imagine most of it was in that scene.
oh, for sure.
Um, Nancy's father shows up to Glenn's house, who lives across the street. Nancy is locked in her house and calls Glenn's house to tell her dad her plan. In the meantime, she booby traps her house in a way that would make Kevin from Home Alone proud, sets her alarm, and she goes to sleep. She fights Freddy, and the alarm goes off, bringing Freddy into her world, or does it? And out of the dream world, or does it? He chases her through the house, finally getting the attention of the cops across the street. She's bashing windows, she's hollering, and the cops ignoring her. And finally, he's like, maybe I should go tell her dad there's something going on, because there's not a serial killer in town.
No, no, not at all.
Uh,
No need
yeah,
for concern of a woman screaming from across the street, right? Best
while
police
being
force
locked in
ever.
her own house. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So, in her infinite wisdom, she decides to set Freddy on fire in her basement. I'm not sure what the plan was. Maybe hoping that he was going to burn down the house. I'm not quite sure.
While trapped in it.
Finally,
Yeah.
finally, the police go to check on her. They bust in. They head down into the basement. However, fiery footsteps lead up to Nancy's mom's room. Nancy and her dad break into the bedroom in time to see Freddy kill her mom and then disappear into her bed under the sheets. Nancy tells her dad she is okay and that she will be downstairs in a minute. She then tells Freddy she knows he is still there, but that she knows she has given him all of his power, and she knows his secret is that he can only survive if they give in to the fear, and she knows that the last few days have really just been a nightmare and that it is over. And as she reaches for the doorknob, Freddy lunges at her and disappears. She opens the door to a brand new day. Or does she? Her friends pick her up, and she gets in the car that is ominously painted like Freddy's sweater. All the doors lock. The car starts driving itself. Nancy looks back as Freddy pulls her mom back in through the front door. So that's that.
And just
Uh,
for those who may not have seen it or are still listening when I watched it, we don't mean he opened the door and pulled her through. Literally went through the little tiny window in the front door and yanked her through it. A very,
because Dream World sequences,
yeah.
yes.
But I just want to make sure they really get the picture of that one because that was
Yeah.
it's some
Yeah.
wacky imagery even for this movie.
Yeah. And that was one of the things about this movie is some of the effects are not really great.
Yeah.
Um,
Um.
but you can kind of live with them because you just write it off as well. It takes place in a dream world.
Right. And of course, you have to keep in mind, like, when this came out, it wasn't the established, like, arguably powerhouse franchise that it became. This was damn near
That's right.
an indie film. So, like, the budget, for as good as the effects were for 1984 and on a very small budget, it was almost an indie film. So, like,
Yeah.
so you give it some leeway with that, but, some things still don't hold up regardless.
Well, I read somewhere that New Line Cinema was about to go bankrupt when this movie came out,
Yes.
and they only had like I want to say $1.8 million for their entire budget
Yep. Yeah.
to make this movie. Yeah, which is a small budget even for the time
Yeah. I mean, they
that this was
literally.
made. So
Yeah, I was gonna say like this movie is nicknamed the house that or the movie that built New Line because like
yeah,
they were ready to file bankruptcy and because they were managed to make this on a relatively for a big budget movie or at least a big release movie, a small budget and it turned a profit. It made all that money back its first weekend. And
Yeah.
so it just continued to make profits. So it literally saved New Line Cinemas as a studio.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's insane because New Line is still around today,
Right.
but they were just about to go under, and here's this little movie that could basically that
Which
put
got
them back on the map, and as we talked about in the Friday the 13th movies, they ended up ultimately buying the Friday the 13th franchise.
yeah, they did. And it's like it was really impressive is this movie, the script, had been turned down by like almost every other major studio at the time. So like everyone passed on it. So like it was just really through a lot of luck and a little bit of fate that New Line ended up with this in their hands. And you,
It's go ahead.
I was just gonna start just getting into like my thoughts on the movie is like and you can
Yeah,
see why it's very out there, especially for 1984 in the horror genre where this is like really is the kind of the king of the slasher era that we
right.
have a very surreal killer. No, a killer that invades your dreams. Now he may be slashing them up, but it is it has a unique feel from anything else that we really got back in this time, and it clearly inspired other stuff to come. Because I mean, it
Well,
opens. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, for one thing, it's a slasher film that the slasher actually talks in.
True. And
Yeah.
but what you will notice for those who know Freddy Krueger now, like who may have watched it within the last say 10 years, you'll notice it's a very different Freddy than what we think of when we think of Freddy Krueger. While he is talking, he's not the quip master. He's not, I mean, he does some, kind of like, shticky things, but like he's not every kill having a one liner. He hasn't quite evolved into that. He's not silent, but he ain't a chatterbox yet either.
That's right. And actually, I can only think of one really one liner in there, and that's when I think he tells Tina,
Yep.
"This is God, Tina."
Yeah.
Talking about his hand, his
Right.
knives.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, he
I
did
think
some.
that's the only one.
Yeah, and he
He
did
he
some
does stuff
visual
like,
stuff.
"I'm going to
Yeah.
split you."
Sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, no, no,
No.
no worries. I'm just saying, like he did like the little things, like just say, "Hey, look at me," and he cut his own fingers off. Just he does shit to
Yeah.
fuck with him that way, but it's not like just the dialogue heavy Freddy that we know that would come down the line.
And you get that very iconic pose that is developed. It's developed in this movie and sticks through all of it, where his right hand that has the glove
Right.
on it, almost he acts like it's weighing him down. He leans with that arm kind of down,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the iconic Freddy pose that sticks throughout all of the movies.
Yeah, Robert Englund has spoken on that. He said he kind of like when he first donned the fedora and kind of saw just his silhouette and stuff like just seeing his frame. He kind of pictured a little bit of a cowboy. So he gave himself kind of the walk is a little gaunt, but like he felt the natural weight of the prop, and he just kind of let his body sag with it naturally. So that really became like the iconic Freddy, just like the stalking and the standing, the posture being weighed down because it was a
Oh,
heavy
very.
prop glove and it was metal. Like he actually like some people the cast, this was the first time dealing with it, so there were some cuts like legit on set.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah, I read somewhere that he actually cut himself when he first put on
yeah, yeah, like
the
like hey, check out this cool thing.
glove.
Immediately hurt yourself. But
Which is probably what I would do too.
oh, I
So
mean, I think every one of us. Like, I mean, that's why I've never gotten a actual prop knife of it. Much as the glove, I love the glove. I know I'll put it on. And I'll probably end up cutting myself. But as I was saying though, like this movie, it jumps in with the creepiness right off the bat. It immediately throws you into the nightmare world, which again, you have no setup until you initially showing you what this movie's going to give you. And I think that was a very smart move. It immediately threw you in. Like if you just kind of slow burned into revealing the dreams, I don't think it would have been as effective. Like they immediately throw you in. And I actually really like that we first focused on Tina. It was a good psych out of like who's going to be the main character.
yeah, I mean, in Tina, the gal that plays Tina is a better actress.
Yeah,
So you automatically assume she's going to be the survivor.
right.
But no, she was not.
Oh no, no,
So
she got handled
yeah,
in an exquisite manner, if I must say. There. But
yeah,
Wes Craven, this was many influences, of course, from anyone who writes this level of story. There's a little bit of actual, and I'm noticing in my notes, I did not write it down what it's called, but there is an actual condition to where like you can be scared. Pretty much, they think it's like you're so scared in your own dream that you can die from it. There was actually several cases from like refugees. I want to say escaped from somewhere in Asia. I don't know if it was like maybe Korea or China, but like they had so much trauma that in their own dreams they couldn't relax, and like their bodies would literally just shut down and they would die from their dreams.
that's just it's crazy.
Yeah,
But they always say that if you actually die in your dream,
right.
you're gonna die.
Yep.
Which is why when you're having a dream, you always wake up right before that moment.
Oh, for sure. I know. I've come close a few times in my nightmares. It's
it
not a good feeling.
is not.
So that's kind of where it started a lot of as far as like him thinking about dreams and stuff. Apparently, Freddy's appearance, as far as his clothing, Wes Craven has a very strong memory from being a child. I guess he called him like a homeless man pretty much, but I don't know, somebody passing by, he just caught someone in a fedora and a raggedy sweater staring at him through his window when he was a child, apparently, and it's always like kind of haunted him. So that's kind of where Freddy got
Wow.
like the fedora and the raggedy sweater and whatnot. So it's like like as we mentioned, Wes Craven, just master of horror, and this is just like, I mean, I think in my mind, kind of peak when I think Wes Craven. I think of this franchise, and this movie, it kicked it all off.
It did. And one thing I noticed is that he uses a lot of the same themes later when he does Scream.
Oh yeah,
Because as far as I know, he was only involved in the first movie in this series, and then he came back later,
yeah.
like in Wes Craven's New Nightmare, I think is when he comes back.
Like as far as like I believe writing and being like in charge of script and stuff, but I think he always had some kind of maybe producer role. I'm sure maybe not directly
Okay.
hands on, but I think they always no talked about a few things. Although I could be wrong, and we'll find. I'll definitely be looking at it as we go through this franchise because
Right.
you look at this and you look at Freddy's Dead. And I'm questioning myself as I make that own statement. You know what I mean? But we'll get to that. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, because the fact that they changed Freddy so much as he
Right.
went, there was, yeah, there's some other things that I think, based off of my memory, that I feel like he kind of like Carpenter in the Halloween movies, kind of was like, okay, you guys do your thing, and just stepped away.
Right.
But because of that, I feel like he used some of those same tropes when he got to Scream, because you have the teenage bad boy, the girls dating, the guy keeps coming through the window that
Yeah.
it's very much the same feel without the supernatural vibe.
Oh no. Yeah. For sure.
So, but yeah, I don't know if you know this or not, but do you know where the name Fred Krueger came from?
No, actually.
So when he was a child, Wes Craven ran a newspaper route, and another kid on the newspaper paper route, similar route where they had some overlap, was named Fred Krueger and bullied him.
Oh wow.
And so he immortalized his childhood bully into being a serial killer in movies.
You know what? And you know what? He might be proud of that. I don't know. I don't know for sure. Especially like in these movies, they didn't really get into it. Although I feel like it's been hinted through the movies. They always call him a child killer, and we kind of know later on they kind of got adapted into a little bit worse. But I said,
Yeah, you know why they did that?
why is that?
So yeah, it originally in the script, Freddy was a child molester,
Right.
but they changed it because right before the movie came out, there was a bunch of child molesting cases that had sprung
Oh,
on in the California area.
right.
So they changed it to just child killer.
Right.
And it's also why they moved it from, if you notice in this movie, the cars have California license plates and you see palm trees and that sort of thing. In later
Oh,
movies, it all
okay.
takes place in Ohio for the same reason, because you had all these string of child killings in the late 80s,
Oh,
and they didn't want their film connected in any way to that.
oh
So they
wow.
changed the location, and they changed him from being a child molester to a killer, and then later came back to the child molesting.
Right. Okay. Wow. Yeah. I never even noticed like where this Elm Street took place at. So yeah, I actually
Yeah,
never realized that.
yeah. So because they talk about it, I think even in the Versus movie, is that there's an Elm Street in every
Right. Right.
city. So there theoretically Freddy could be anywhere,
That's true.
but yeah, they that's why they changed it from California to Ohio.
Oh, I got you.
I I thought that was a pretty interesting bit of trivia as
No,
well.
no, for sure. I've got some trivia for you as well, as
Yeah, go
as
for it,
usual.
bud.
Did you notice what movie Nancy was watching? I want to say it's when like the second or third time before she finally got Freddy out, but she's kind of like she's watching a movie while trying to like she's slowly just fading asleep.
I heard like the volume of the movie, and I knew it was a horror movie, but in my mind I couldn't place it. What movie was it?
I was actually watching the original Evil Dead, which
Oh wow.
yeah, which again Sam Raimi pops up in all like you could just which really just shows like he had they had references to his stuff in Friday the 13th as well, and he has a little hand in this as too. Just everyone kind of giving their shout outs, which is also why Freddy's glove appeared in Evil Dead 2 in the cabin.
Ah, so it was just this friendly going back and forth between the two, then, huh?
Yeah, yeah, just everyone giving nods to just basically because like buddies just basically giving shout outs to each other in their own movies. It's pretty cool. And
Yeah, and I think Evil Dead was a New Line movie as well, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, I think you're right. Actually, I didn't
Yeah.
realize that. Yeah, no, but then there you go. But yeah, they're showing the original Evil Dead movie she's watching on the TV, which I've also never noticed until this viewing. I never realized that's what it was.
Yeah, I knew it was a horror movie, but I didn't know
Yeah, it's real
that it was
brief.
Evil Dead. That's
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll say it's real brief, but you get a shot of Bruce Campbell with a nice with a Raimi tight close ups, like for a second on screen. So like I said, it's real hard to kind of tell
That's
unless you
crazy.
just happen to catch it. Another fun little fact is, as you love what I love is when like you get legit reactions in a film. So like in the end, when you
Yeah.
mentioned the car coming out that looked like Freddy, that's because they had the drop top canopy had the stripes. Well, it like slams down to reveal it, and then they all kind of jump and like scream and laugh. That was legit because it was not supposed to slam down that hard. So you got a good little
That's always great.
oh yeah, so you got a good little just like the genuine like scared reaction from them for a second, and then like a little like oh okay it's just a roof. It would fit perfectly in there. But that's
That's always great when they have those, like, well, we didn't really mean to scare you, but hey, we're glad you got scared
you can't.
because it works.
Oh yeah, yeah, you can't beat the authenticity of a legit jump scare.
That's right.
And just a little side note, I think it's the most iconic scene in the movie for me at least. Is one of my favorite shots, definitely, when Freddy is just kind of melting out the wall, kind of pushing out the wall above Nancy as she's sleeping,
Yep.
which is just
Yep.
looks so amazing. And all it is literally spandex stretched over a fake like kind of a border wood and a cutout of the wall, and it's just him pushing through. It's
Wow.
so simple, and then they did the quick cutaway where you see her knock on the actual wall and
Yeah.
switched out the fake wall. But it's like it's a simple effect that's just my god, that's just it's so creepy in the movie, and it's so well done and well shot. For it just as simple as like some elastic material, some like spandex.
Well, I mean, speaking of creepy, this movie really does creepy well. For a
Oh yeah,
movie that only has, I think, 4 kills in it,
right.
it does creepy extraordinarily well from the very beginning. From, as you said, that opening sequence where he's chasing Tina in her dream, to the scene where Nancy's sleeping in school and she's following Tina's body in a body bag being dragged through the hallways and down into the boiler rooms of the school.
Yeah,
Um,
like to this
there's
day, that body bag sequence still gets me because I know I did not watch this when I was a kid, but I somehow have a vague memory of seeing that particular scene in my youth and scaring the shit out of me. And
oh wow,
like when she's just, it is the exact moment of like looking over and she's just sitting in the chair looking at her through the transparent body bag with the blood. That has always
yeah.
stuck with me because I know I saw that somehow, whether it was on like, even if it's a TV edited version, I somehow saw that when I was young, and I remember being just absolutely terrified, and for the longest not knowing
Snuck
where it
one
was.
past your parents, huh?
I guess so somehow, and for the longest I had no idea where it was from because I never saw the rest of the movie. I just know that
Oh,
one
gotcha,
scene. It was pretty crazy.
gotcha. Yeah, I saw this. I didn't see it in the theaters, but this came out pretty, hot on the heels of home videos and that sort of thing when people started having VHSs. And I saw it at home, VHS. My parents weren't huge on, well, let me rephrase this. When I lived with my dad, they weren't real huge on letting us go to horror movies,
Oh, okay.
but they would let us watch them at home on VHS where
Oh,
they
okay.
could be there with us or whatever. So,
Right, right.
um, so it wasn't like it was a, taboo type thing. It was just more of like, we're going to do it with some supervision type thing.
Yeah, so they can.
But yeah, so yeah, we watched it on VHS and it freaked you out, back then. And one thing it does extraordinarily well is that it's really hard to kind of notice where the transitions from reality to dream happen sometimes.
Oh no, yeah, for sure. Because there's a couple of like, there's a good little like fake outs when you think you're out of the dream, and then something else fucked up happens really quickly, and then they wake up. It's kind of like, and I think it set that standard of like the dream sequence fake out.
Well, and it also, I mean, there's it leaves you to believe at some points that they're never really out of the dream.
Right.
I'm not saying that that's the case, but for instance, when the alarm goes off and Glenn had fallen asleep with her, and she's like, "Oh, okay, well I'm awake," and then she notices this like feather floating in the sky, and
Right.
she's like, "Oh crap, we got to get to the jail and check on Rod." So it's like you don't really quite know. And then with her comments at the end of it, when she says, "Oh, this has all been a nightmare. I want all my friends back."
Yeah,
You
and
know,
even then we're yeah because we had like the car and Freddy pull out thing like she clearly was still in the dream. Kind of ambiguous, with that like
yeah.
yeah like not certain about what that ending.
So yeah, so the ending was supposed to be a happy ending with Nancy defeating Freddy
Right.
at the end of it, and then she walks through and everything's just happy. All of her friends are back and all of that. But the producer felt like it would be better to end it on kind of a cliffhanger for the sequels.
Right.
So that's where that came in from. But it leaves it very ambiguous, kind of like the end of most horror, these kind of horror movies where you don't know if what happens at the end really happened or not.
Right.
So yeah,
You always got a sequel bait at the end there,
yeah,
just in
exactly.
case.
Just in case, unless it's the final one, which
Yeah.
is never the final one.
I'm about to say yeah. The finals are never the finals, but
That's
no,
right.
like we said, I mean, the only real like critique I have as far as like a negative comment is, yeah, some of the acting is not the best, but these are also, a lot of young up and coming actors, so
Yeah.
not all gonna hit their stride. Like
Yep.
like Johnny Depp obviously went on to do a lot of big stuff. Heather Langenkamp or however you say her name,
Yeah.
Nancy. She I think
Yeah.
she got better because like little spoilers, she does appear in other movies in this series, and I think her
Yep.
acting gets better. And
It does.
yeah,
I mean, she never becomes a world class actor, but she does get better. You can tell she worked on her craft.
oh for sure.
Um,
Sorry, go ahead.
you know, well, like I said, that's kind of the twist too, is because Tina. It's real easy to tell at the beginning of it that the lady that plays Tina has a little bit of acting chops, and that's what kind of leads you to believe that it's going to be Tina, but nope, not at all.
That good old twist, as far as like
Yep,
you think it's gonna be one, and then boom, new
yep.
the new lead, in this case, leading lady, with her her white hair rogue streak she got from when she pulled out Freddy's hat.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I talked about the effects earlier not being great, and I want to kind of backtrack that a little bit because other than really two effects, I felt like they did a really good job.
Oh no,
Um,
yeah, for sure.
the arm stretching out just looked really wanky to me, but also the time they did it, it's in a dream sequence. I let that go, but then when his face peels off to reveal a skeleton underneath, it was just not real great effects there.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
there's a lot of good effects in this as well. The blood scene that we talked about earlier.
right.
Um,
Oh,
there's some that they're limited to the technology that was available at the time they made the movie as well.
oh, for sure.
So
But you can see where they use like with a lot of their practical effects using the simple methods. Like there's that the sequence after the arm stretch where you just see him back to normal down the alley. He starts running. Watching it a million
yeah,
times, you could tell that's not Robert England. The body size is a bit
right,
different, but it's so they could do a quick jump cut where he would magically, because it's a dream and actually makes sense in this horror movie, just magically appear
right,
behind him. So like little effects like that, what we talked about with like the spandex stretching through the wall and stuff. Uh, you know,
right.
they made good. And so did it all work? Nah. But like again, for the time, for the budget, and yeah, I mean, it was
Yeah,
just very creative and very working with what they had, and it made what some could argue is just one of the most iconic horror movies in the genre.
yeah. I mean, you can't argue that, and it launched a franchise. I think that has 8 or 9 movies in it.
Right.
It's kind of hard to critique that, and it saved a production company.
Oh, for
You
sure.
know,
And to get John
uh,
Saxton in anything, you got to be doing something right.
yeah. Where I recognize him from is Enter the Dragon,
Oh, I mean,
Bruce Lee
yeah,
movie. Yeah, but he's been in so many things.
for two movies besides this one and some of the sequels that we'll get into later. Yeah, Enter the
Right.
Dragon and Dawn of the Dead in the 1970s ones.
Yep.
Yeah, those are like
Yep.
for me. Those are the quintessential John Saxon films.
And then a little piece of trivia because I don't know if our fans know, but I'm a huge Star Wars fan.
Yep.
So when this movie got started, Robert England was actually, well, before this movie, when Robert England was still on the set of V,
Right.
there was a script that got handed to him for Star Wars
Oh
because
shit.
he was a blonde haired guy, and he said, "No, I don't really want to get typecasted into these space movies, because he's doing something with aliens already." So he goes home and he hands his roommate the script and says, "Hey, you need to contact your agent." And his roommate was Mark Hamill, and the rest is history, of course.
No shit. I've never
Yeah.
heard that.
Yep. So
Wow.
without Robert England, Mark Hamill never becomes Luke Skywalker.
And then we have
Is that not crazy?
Mark Hamill as Freddy Krueger. And now I'm getting these alternate world realities going through my head. That's nuts, man. Uh,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
like you can't argue Robert Englund's success with the Freddy franchise. He came back for all of them. So except for the new remake.
Until the remake.
Until the
Yep.
remake, he was in every one of these, and he's got his fame, his fortune, and he's done other movies. I always love it when I see because he is so iconically Freddy Krueger to me. It's even
Yep.
even though I know he was in V and I know he's been in other stuff, but whenever he pops up in other films, I'm like, oh, it's Fred Krueger. He does other stuff. Like it's just the role that made him for a generation for sure. Because he had done small TV and some small movie appearances before this, but I would argue, V was big. I know V, the series was really big, and he was a big part of that. But for at least my generation, my age group, this is what made Robert Englund a household name.
Oh yeah, I mean, I recognized him when I saw Nightmare on Elm Street the first time
Right.
because I was such a fan of V. It was such and it doesn't hold up, but it was such a great television show and miniseries, and I recognized him because they really don't change his looks; they just make him look burned up.
Right.
So he's easy to recognize in his makeup. Eh, So it was like I recognized him, but you're right. When you see him in other things, it's like immediately, oh hey, it's Freddy Krueger,
Yeah.
and
Especially
yeah,
in these later ones where he got to have a bit more personality. It really, and a lot of that is actually Robert Englund, contributing to it, to the character. Because, like, clearly somewhere, which I know part three is where I really remember to amp it up. We'll see about part two when we go through that. But, like, at some point, someone had decided, like, hey, we got to we see what I understand of Robert Englund's natural personality. They really kind of wanted to put a more shine onto that in the sequels. For better or worse, as they go down the
yeah,
line, we'll get into that when we get to them.
yeah, because part two kind of takes a left turn.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, we'll get into that. I believe next week at this point. So yeah, anything else we want to add other
Uh,
than our favorite kill and our rankings?
I think we're gonna. I think that's pretty much good for me, and because my favorite kill does also want to, we'll tie back around to what we were talking about. So
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and lay it out there? Again, there's only 5 deaths if you count the mom twice.
right,
So uh, go ahead and give us your favorite kill.
my kill for this movie and kill of the week is Tina dancing on the ceiling. To quote an old Eddie song, which again, yeah, just the from the bed screaming, and you see the initial slashes to her floating up, and then into actually just on the ceiling, just getting destroyed by Freddy, basically with the rotating room. Which, as we know, behind the scenes, they created an entire rotating room to create that effect. It's like
Wow.
while it looks like it's just her going from the corner up on the ceiling, is a trick of a fully 360 rotating room and a camera with a steady cam that keeps it all in one shot. And you have the imposed of I already forgot her boyfriend's name, Rod.
Rod.
Rod, kind of
Yeah.
screaming, and that's just his image kind of put in front of it. But yeah, so like it's an
Gotcha.
old school trick, but again, kind of showing a very good practical effect of how they got her to look like she's just being dragged across the ceiling of the room until she just finally
Okay.
falls into a bloody splat and splash on there. Like that's to me that's just an iconic kill and for me the best one overall of the there's a runner up. I'm waiting to see if that's the one you picked.
I I actually picked Tina as well
Oh, good man,
because
good man.
because it really is the best kill in the movie.
Yeah,
Uh, Now I'll go ahead and throw my runner up out there,
yeah,
and it's Glenn's kill,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's his kill, and the only reason why he didn't win the kill of the week was because they don't actually show his death.
Right.
Freddy's arm comes up, sucks him into the bed, and then you just see all of this blood
Yeah.
come, this fountain of, and when the cop walks in and the blood's dripping from the ceiling, and he just puts a bucket under it, and the dad, Glenn's dad walks in and sees the blood and like turns around like he's gonna throw up, and then they go upstairs and Dancy's dad asks one of the other cops, he says, "What's the coroner say?" And he says, "He's been in the bathroom throwing up for the last half hour."
Right. Yeah. While like I said, while granted not showing it exactly what he did to him, the blood geyser
Yeah,
is also very much iconic imagery from this film.
and in my mind, I and I'm gonna have to remember which movie it actually happens in, but in my mind, Glenn had got sucked into a waterbed.
Oh no, no,
But of
that's a different one. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But of course, that's not what happened. It's a regular bed.
yep.
Um,
This
yep.
drawn into too much fluffiness into the bed. It was a too soft of a mattress. You can see that's why y'all got to have firm
Yep.
mattresses out there.
Yeah, to keep Freddy's arm from sucking you in and turning you into a blood geyser.
Yeah, got to make him work for it.
Yeah. Now, so I did see a behind the scene picture that had Johnny Depp, and they were just covering him in blood, but they
Oh,
never really show us that. They do
right.
show a body on the bed with a blanket over it, and the body sitting there, or with a sheet over it, but you don't ever see the character again. So,
Maybe they got
yeah,
cut. Maybe they intended to show the aftermath of that, and maybe it had to get cut to keep the R rating.
I would be willing to bet that that was probably the case based off of the 500 gallons of blood that we got to see right there.
Right, right.
So, okay, so now's the test of time. I think we're going to do the same thing we did on the last one, which, on the Friday the 13th movies, which is save our ratings and, give us an overall at the end of it.
Right.
So now for the big moment, Sean, what's your grade on this movie?
Well, I take in like consideration all of like budgetary time, and of course it's being damn near an independent film, just happened to be published by a major studio that was dying.
Right.
I forgive a lot of like what I would probably nitpick a bit harder on other movies, but still not a perfect film. But you can't deny its iconicness. So I'm giving it a solid 4 stars.
Are you okay? I gave it a 3.5, so that gives it a total of 7.5.
Right.
And yeah, again, for a lot of the same reasons, and really overall, it holds up. There's a lot of creepiness. There's a lot of tension in the movie that in the dream sequences, and some of it is just done so exceptionally well that it holds up to today's standards. But some of it, of course, you can tell it's a little dated.
Right.
But
No,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. For me, it's definitely like Friday the 13th is my franchise, but
right.
I've always attested to Nightmare having a much stronger start, I think, than Friday did. But
Yeah, I think that may be the case.
yeah, you'll see in the long game. I don't my scores aren't probably going to get much better.
Yeah, I think this franchise, and again, it's been a long time since I watched it, so it'll be interesting to see how it holds up and how it scores across the board, and
uh,
to see where everything ranks. But I
Absolutely.
tend to believe, like you do, that it starts off strong and heads downhill pretty quickly. But we'll see.
Yes, we will. All right.
All right.
So I think we are good. So if you guys enjoyed what you heard, please give us a thumbs up, like the video, share it, leave a comment. Tell us what you thought about, Nightmare on Elm Street. What's the first time you watched it? Do you like it? Do you think it holds up? Do you like it better when Freddy's got the power glove? Just let us know. Hit us up down in the comments for sure. And as always, though, like I said, share the video around. And yeah, we're going to catch y'all next time.
See you next week.